Have you ever walked past a historic building and just wondered why it looks the exact way it does? Like, why is one structure covered in this wild, beautiful fever dream of botanical forms while another one, literally right down the street, looks like a sharp concrete machine reaching for the sky? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to put on our architectural historian hats and decode the built environment around us. We're looking at the ultimate clash between the two greatest modern design movements of the 20th century, Art Nouveau and Art Deco. But we aren't just stopping at their origins in Europe. We're going to explore exactly what happens when these huge global paradigms collide head-on, with intense heat, heavy monsoon rains, and incredible indigenous craftsmanship. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll hit point 1, nature versus the machine. Then 2, decoding the visual divide. Next up is translating styles to the tropics, followed by Baha'i woodwork versus Escolta streamline. Then we'll cover engineering for tropical heat and wrap up with the enduring architectural legacy. Before we get into the styles themselves, I want you to imagine something. Picture taking a solid, heavy masonry building from Paris, or maybe a sleek, totally sealed glass structure from New York, and dropping it right in the middle of the equatorial tropics. Could you actually survive inside it? Short answer? Absolutely not. To put that into perspective, the average annual humidity in Paris hovers around the low 70s, which is usually pretty comfortable. But in Manila, it regularly pushes above 80 or 90%. And that comes with blistering equatorial sun and torrential monsoon rains. A European glass box would literally turn into an oven in minutes. This was the fundamental do-or-die challenge that architects faced in the early 20th century. But before we see how they solved it, we really need to understand the two massive design movements they were playing with. Which brings us to section 1, nature versus the machine. It really all comes down to a philosophical battle. Art Nouveau emerged in the 1890s, and it was basically a profound psychological reaction against the dehumanizing effects of the Industrial Revolution. People were tired of factories. The whole philosophy was about escaping mass-produced sterility and retreating back into the organic unpredictability of nature. It prioritized meticulous emotional artisanship. You can literally feel the human hand in it. But then, things shifted. After the absolute devastation of the First World War in the 1920s, the world was left totally shattered. Art Deco exploded onto the scene as the exact opposite response. Society didn't want a romantic retreat into the woods anymore. They wanted to rebuild a broken world, using math, logic, and steel. Art Deco eagerly embraced industrialization. It celebrated the machine age, pulling inspiration from roaring locomotives, massive ocean liners, and those new soaring skyscrapers. So where Nouveau was nostalgic, Deco was a confident, almost aggressive sprint toward a mechanized future. Moving right along to section 2, decoding the visual divide. Now, what's really interesting about this is how these mindsets translated into physical, visual elements. Let's put these two titans side by side and decode their visual DNA. If you look at the primary forms, Art Nouveau completely abandons the hard right angle. It totally favors flowing, organic asymmetry. Art Deco, on the flip side, is defined by angular, sharp, mathematically symmetrical geometry. It's basically the difference between a wild, growing vine and a stamped metal gear. Notice the motifs, too. Nouveau uses creeping vines, blooming flowers, soft curves. Deco draws from the rigid, imposing power of ancient ziggurats, exploding sunbursts, and aerodynamic chevrons. And the color palettes? They tell the exact same story. Nouveau relies on these subdued, earthy tones, dusty pinks, sage, olive greens, really grounding you in the forest. Deco just projects industrial wealth, with high-contrast metallics, bold emeralds, and stark polished blocks. To really, truly grasp Art Nouveau, you have to understand its ultimate defining characteristic, the whiplash curve. What is it? Well, it's a long, sinuous, restless line that bends and veers back on itself. It mimics the organic, completely unpredictable growth of a plant stem reaching for sunlight. And this wasn't just some pretty random shape. It was a deliberate, rebellious rejection of rigid industrial proportion. It dictated this feeling of continuous, fluid, asymmetrical movement across literally everything, from delicate little pieces of jewelry to heavy wooden furniture, all the way up to the massive facades of buildings. All right, section 3, translating styles to the tropics. So what happens when these deeply European ideas travel across the globe? Because to truly test the resilience of an architectural style, you have to push it to its absolute limits. And that brings us to the Philippines, which is the perfect crucible of extreme tropical weather, incredible indigenous craftsmanship, and colliding colonial histories. The crucial point here is that bringing these styles to Manila was absolutely not just a copy and paste job. It demanded intense indigenization. Take the master sculptor Isabelo Tampinco, for example. As an architectural historian looking at his work, you immediately see the genius. He looked at the flowing, botanical nature of European Art Nouveau and realized, hey, this could perfectly adapt to local flora. He systematically threw out the traditional European acanthus leaves. Instead, he wove the broad, fan-like shape of the native anahaw leaf, segmented stalks of bamboo, and sweeping areca palm fronds right into those signature whiplash curves. He effectively decolonized the imported motif. This localized hybrid became known as estilo Tampenco, and the best part? He democratized it. By casting these complex botanical forms in escayola, which is a local plaster substitute, these flowing designs weren't just for the ultra-wealthy anymore. They could be integrated into everyday Filipino homes. A real game changer.
Which brings us to Section 4, Bahay woodwork versus a Esculta streamline.
This localized adaptation creates an incredible face-off when we compare domestic living spaces to the rise in commercial centers in Manila. Take the Bahay Nakapil Bautista, built in 1914. This is a traditional Bahay Nakabato, a house of stone and wood. But its interior? It is an absolute masterclass in a specific, stylized variant of Art Nouveau called the Vienna Secession. Local craftsmen meticulously hand-carved the traditional wooden ventilation panels with abstract geometric interpretations of the quiapo plant, which is a hyperlocal aquatic lily. I mean, imagine walking in there, catching the rich, earthy smell of the dark wood and the deeply tactile, textured feeling of running your hand over those hand-carved floral panels. It is such a stark contrast to the cold, flat drywall we see in modern mass-produced homes, right? The entire house was synthesized around these domestic, tactile details, really proving how beautifully the organic Nouveau style adapted to elevated traditional woodwork. Now let's step out of the house and on to the bustling commercial streets of Manila. By the late 1920s, on Escolta Street, we witnessed the imposing rise of Art Deco. Look at the first United building. We have completely shifted from warm, tactile wood to unyielding concrete, glass, and steel. This is the machine age flexing its muscles for sure. The flowing vines? Entirely gone. They're replaced by unornamented rectangular segments and strong, straight, vertical lines that are specifically designed to draw your eye upward toward the sky. It projects this unshakable urban authority and ruthless cosmopolitan progress, maximizing space and natural lighting for a booming, rapidly modernizing economy. Section 5. Engineering for tropical heat. Here's the thing. Both the wooden domestic homes and those towering concrete commercial buildings shared one relentless enemy, the equatorial climate. Long before we could just press a button for instant air conditioning, the building itself had to act as the climate control. And this brilliantly illustrates how aesthetic form had to submit to survival function. To survive the punishing heat, the traditional Bahay na Bato relied on brilliant passive cooling engineering. First, they used ventilias, these small sliding shutters right at floor level to draw in cool breezes straight across the floorboards. Second, instead of trapping heat with heavy European glass, they used sliding windows made of translucent cappus shells. These beautifully diffused the blinding sun without turning the room into a greenhouse. Finally, they used calados, those pierced wooden panels near the ceiling to let hot rising air naturally escape. Remember those beautiful Art Nouveau floral scrolls we talked about? Yeah, they weren't just decorative artwork. They were carved directly into these vital, functional ventilation panels. Art Deco architects faced that exact same climate challenge, but they were working with modern, heat-absorbing materials. If they had stubbornly built these solid masonry and unventilated glass block walls used in Western Art Deco, they would have created a suffocating greenhouse effect inside. People would roast. Instead, architects like Pablo Antonio didn't just compromise the Deco style, they brilliantly evolved it. They turned a potential oven into a breathing, stylish structure. For example, at Far Eastern University, they designed these amazing checkerboard walls that alternated open and closed pierced glass blocks to permit continuous cooling airflow. They used intricate, geometric wrought iron grills to ensure cross-ventilation and even extended thin concrete slabs outward to act as permanent built-in sunshades against that intense glare. This tropical adaptation of Art Deco even extended deeply into public health engineering. The Kazan Institute, completed in 1938, utilized the sleek aesthetic of Art Deco for a tuberculosis sanatorium. The clean, sharp, unornamented lines of Art Deco actually perfectly suited the new medical obsession with sanitation, cleanliness, and getting rid of dust-collecting surfaces. The architect, Juan Nakpil, knew that to fight a respiratory disease in the tropics, the building itself had to literally breathe. So he integrated sweeping open-air connecting walkways, massive open grounds, and high-volume spaces to maximize natural cross-ventilation and purifying sunlight. It proved that Deco could be visually monumental while being incredibly responsive to environmental health needs.
And finally, Section 6, the enduring architectural legacy.
As we wrap up, there is a fascinating irony in architectural history here. While Art Deco quickly faded away in the West by the 1940s, mostly replaced by the international style, it actually survived well into the post-war era in the Philippines. It evolved into a powerful tool for nationalistic monumentalism. Just look at the Quezon Memorial Shrine with its towering 66-meter pylons. At the very top of these stark, mathematically disciplined Deco structures are massive mourning angels. But get this, they are wearing traditional Filipiniana terno dresses and holding native sampaguita flowers. Or consider the Santo Domingo Church, a structure massive enough to hold 7,000 devotees. It flawlessly merges this cavernous scale and traditional Romanesque arches with the strict, unornamented discipline of late Art Deco. These structures project permanence, resilience, and a fiercely independent national identity way after the style's supposed global expiration date. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with. When we look at these incredible structures, from the flowing, tactile wooden carvings of the Bahay na Bato to the streamlined, unyielding concrete towers of Escolta, is true architectural genius found in inventing a global style in Paris or Vienna? Or is it found in mastering how to indigenize and engineer that style so it can survive and thrive in the punishing heat of the tropics? Next time you walk past a historic building, take a closer look at the details. You might just see a fascinating story of global design and local survival carved right into the walls. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking up.